What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be continuing to talk about the disappearance of Eric Lee Franks. This is part 2. If you have not seen part 1, please watch that first. 1 comes before 2, so I have some things I'd like to discuss with my subscribers at the end, so make sure you watch the video all the way through. Let's just get started. So we left off with Eric not communicating with friends or family and only communicating with his mother through email. He was supposed to go and visit his mother and family in Ohio with his daughter and possibly Kendra, I'm not sure. They had all these plans. He was supposed to get some major dental work done that was already paid for in Ohio that he could not get paid for in Michigan. Don't know how it was paid for, don't know, but it was some kind of plan, maybe a payment plan, I don't know. Anyways, he just never showed up, no explanation beforehand, and his mother received an email stating that he was trying to find a place that would pay for it in Michigan. So that's basically where we left off. So let's just continue on before I end up making this more confusing than it already is. So when he didn't show up for this visit, it wasn't just his mother that became worried. Friends and family started getting worried, and they kind of started thinking it was sketch that he just wasn't even answering the new phone, because remember, he gave his mom the new phone number that he had. So his mother handed out this phone number to his close friends and other family members, and everybody started reaching out to him at this point on that phone. But it never got answered. They never got any texts back, no calls back, no return to voicemail. It was basically like the phone would just ring and that was it. So they weren't even sure if that was Eric's. It was just Eric emailing his mother saying it was his phone number. But now people are starting to wonder, like, is this even Eric emailing us? Some of the family and friends did get emails back, but again, they were short, generic. They weren't like in response to them asking if he's okay, asking where he was, why nobody had heard from him, and they were just like generic responses like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, there was no conversation back and forth, which is very weird from someone you haven't heard from in months, and you're trying, it's just weird, you guys know. Also, during these months from March to August, when all this was going on with the phone calls and the emails, Eric went from posting every single detail and tons of pictures of his life on Facebook multiple times a day to posting maybe once a week with, again, completely generic, no pictures and completely generic posts. His friends and family later said that these posts and even the emails weren't written how Eric wrote. Do you know what I mean? Do you know how you can, like, certain people have their way of typing, their way of texting, and even of posting statuses on Facebook? I definitely know I do. I always have to write out the full word. I use punctuation. I make sure my spelling is proper. And I'll send, like, in a text, one big long text instead of breaking it up. So things like that. And they weren't in Eric's manner, these Facebook posts or these emails. One of Eric's close friends named Shane actually became concerned enough that in June he decided, forget this, and he reached out to Kendra. He kind of laid out his suspicions and told her how weird it was, that everyone was thinking that something sus was going on. I mean, he just put all the suspicions out on the table to Kendra and was like, look, you need to have Eric get back to somebody. If it's not me, let it be his mother. He needs to get back to somebody. Kendra assured this friend that everything was fine and Eric was with her, and you know, they were hanging out. He was perfectly fine, but he was super busy with work, super busy with moving. Now they were together, so they had her 2 girls, and that he had no cell service at all, so he had to email. And the reason they were so short and choppy was because he was super duper busy. He was excited about his new life, all this stuff, etc., you know. But she said that she would have Eric reach back out to him just to confirm that he was okay and that nothing sus was going on. So she said she'd make sure Eric contacted him, or definitely somebody, you know, right away. However, August came and went, and not only did Eric never contact anyone by phone or text, all the emails stopped too. So in August, all communication with Eric stopped completely, including with his mom. Unfortunately, it took until November for his mom to report him missing. I guess she kind of took Kendra's word for it. She probably didn't want to be overbearing. I don't really know, but I know the last time she spoke to him was in March, but she waited until November because the emails, you know what I mean? Who wants to think something happened to their child? So the emails, she ended up reporting him missing in November. His mother, however, reported Eric missing to the Ohio police, and because Eric lived in Michigan, the Ohio police couldn't do anything for her. If Eric was missing, it would be the responsibility of the town or county where he was living in Michigan to take the missing persons report and take action. So the Ohio police did reach out to the police in Bridgeport, Michigan, where Eric was last living, as far as his mother and anyone else knew. And Eric had a best female friend. Her name was Leah. And Leah was really upset. You can see her in the Disappeared episode. I feel like maybe she had some feelings for Eric. They were very close. And she started posting on Facebook and social media that Eric was missing. Leah posted all of the details about what had happened, how his mother had last spoke to him in March. He never showed up in July. There had been nothing but email contact, which people were suspicious of. The new phone number never worked. Everything that I had been explaining had been going on, and that there was no contact from him, no communication at all from August until December. So Leah put all this out there on Facebook, and I think other social media as well, but I know she definitely put it out there on Facebook. As far as anyone knew, and Eric's friends and family, he didn't have any close friends in Bridgeport besides Kendra that they can reach out to and be like, hey, where's Eric? And Shane had already spoken to Kendra, and Kendra had assured him Eric would call, but the complete opposite had happened because, big surprise, Kendra was probably lying, but we'll get to that. So we need to talk about Eric and Leah for a minute because this is really important. Eric told Leah everything. He told her things that he didn't tell his mother, he didn't tell anyone else. She was his best friend and his confidant. And she said the last time she had spoken to him, which was also in March, like when she had heard it, last time she had heard his voice, he was telling her that he no longer trusted Kendra. Leah spoke to Eric almost every day, and I'm not making like an indictment on her. I'm just wondering how she didn't realize for all these months, but I guess, again, you don't want to think the worst, so be kind in the comments, guys. So almost immediately after Leah putting all of this information on Facebook and social media about Eric being missing, all of a sudden, Eric's mother got an email from Eric saying he was freaking out, that they needed to take that down, that he wasn't missing, what were they thinking, etc., etc. Like, kind of like Eric was angry in this email or upset because he wasn't missing. He was saying, like, I've been here the whole time. I'm just busy. Can't I be busy? I'm not saying that's exactly what it said, but from my research and what I read and what I've watched, that was the tone of the email. He was like, listen, I'm busy. I'll get in touch with you when I can. I'm sorry it's been so long, but I'm not missing. Take that down. Eric's mother responded to this email by saying she was not taking anything down. She was not telling the police she had spoke to him because in the email it said, I'm emailing you now so you can tell the police that you spoke to me. She said basically, until I hear my son's voice, I am not stopping and I'm going to continue looking and continue keeping him labeled as a missing person, which that's exactly what she should have done. I would have done the exact same thing. His mother wanted answers, and she wasn't going to stop now until she got them. She explained that she was really worried because no one had apparently seen him except Kendra or heard his voice since March, so it was 8 months now. However, his mother did not get another response when she sent this email back. Nobody got anything, and it went back to complete silence from Eric. No email, no phone calls, no text, no social media. It was like this one message begging her to stop, calling him missing and to get the police off a case. But nothing ever came back after she explained that she was not going to do that until she heard his voice, figuring he'd call, but he didn't. The police, however, were dragging their feet. If you remember, Eric had at one point had a pretty nomadic lifestyle. He had a pretty nomadic lifestyle when he lived in Michigan until he and Kendra supposedly got back together. So they were like, look, he's 38 years old. He's, you guys know the drill of what happens when a grown adult who's a little bit nomadic goes missing. How the police act. The police said, he had gone long stretches without contacting anyone, including his mother before, but his mother explained never this long, and my son, if he saw how worried I was that I reported him missing, would not send me an email, an angry email. He would call me concerned that I was upset and thinking he was missing. The way the police saw it, though, was, well, it's been 8 months and now you're starting to get worried? Why now? Why not wait another month or another 2 months? If you thought it was nothing wrong for all these months, then why is something suddenly wrong now? I can understand what they're saying, but I don't understand what they're saying. Like, I understand their words, but like, are you kidding me? This is a mother. looking for her son. Do your job. Just because the police weren't taking it seriously, though, and dragging their feet, that did not mean his friends and family were going to do the same, and they jumped into action immediately. Eric's mother and aunt started with trying to get in touch with Kendra because they wanted to ask her when the last time she saw him was and why she hadn't gotten in contact with anyone when she hadn't heard from him in such a long time. Kendra did eventually end up speaking to Eric's mother and aunt, and she told them both the same thing. And what she told them was completely different from what she told Shane. Remember, she told Shane that in June, she and Eric were together. Everything was fine. He was just busy and had no cell service. What she told Eric's mother and aunt was that back in April, she and Eric had had a huge argument because she had decided she did not want to get back together with him. She was going to stay with John, with their daughter Emily, and her and John's daughter. And Eric went and parked his car on her front lawn for 3 days and stayed there waiting for her. And when she did not come out, he said pretty much, I can't quote it, but she basically said, he said, F this, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm going back to California. And that's exactly what he did. He sped off. So now she's telling Eric's mother and aunt that she hadn't seen him since April when she told Shane that in June she was with him. Kendra said that while he was parked on the front lawn, he was calling her, texting her incessantly, screaming that he wanted to be with her, for her to come outside. But she was not giving in. She was staying with her husband, and she was not getting back together with Eric. And that's when he said, F this. He said he was going to California. People were starting to get confused because I think at this point I don't know if they knew what she had told Shane, but they were like, on the one hand, if Kendra didn't want to get back together with him, Eric had a habit of dropping everything and taking off when he needed a change of scenery, when he got upset. And he loved California. But on the other hand, they knew that he had found out years ago he couldn't afford to live there. And they were like, there's no way he would leave his daughter. I mean, maybe Kendra, but his newfound daughter that he loved so much and was so happy to be around. So they weren't really buying this. Emily knew Eric was her dad. They had this great relationship. Eric wasn't the type of guy to walk away from that, not for anything. He just wasn't that guy. He wanted so badly to be in her life. They got along so well. She loved him so much. He loved her. So there was no way he was just taking off on Emily. He told Kendra he was going to find a new girlfriend, according to her. Maybe that's the case, but he wasn't leaving to go to California. There was no way he was leaving Michigan. There was no way he was leaving his daughter, period. And I believe that. I mean, that's just my opinion, but that's what I would have believed if I was Eric's mother or family, for sure. Another issue that came up why Eric's friends and family were extremely skeptical and not really believing Kendra's story is because no matter how nomadic Eric was, even if he went like a month without talking to them, he would have called like Leah to tell her what was going on. He would have called his mother. He would have called somebody and been like, this is what happened with Kendra. I can't believe it. He would have been posting on Facebook. Eric wasn't the type of guy, sorry guys, again, my bangs. Eric wasn't the type of guy to go full on radio silence. He blasted everything out there, at least to certain people, and on Facebook. He would post every detail of his life multiple times a day, every day. Putting everything I just said aside, the main concern that they had, so I guess they did know, was that she told Shane in June that her and Eric were together. He was just busy. I already said this. And now she's saying that he left in April. So that's a huge contradiction. Why is she lying, essentially? Like, what does she have to hide? What does she have to prove? Why is she telling so many different stories? I mean, you got to admit, that's pretty sus. They brought all of this information to the authorities about Kendra's conflicting stories, everything that they had found, and all of their concerns. And finally, the police started working on the case and looking for Eric. The police decided to start by trying to trace Eric's email. After all, from March to August, he was emailing with people, even if it was a little weird how his emails were coming out. He was in contact. His email, at least, was. And also, supposedly, it was him in November who contacted his mother, telling her to take down all the stuff on social media and not report him missing, that he wasn't missing. So I guess, in my opinion, I'm not an investigator, but sounds pretty good of a place to start. Sounds pretty legit. The last email Eric had supposedly sent, or the last email sent from his account, came from a Burger King in Michigan. I think it was near Bridgeport, but it was months later. So the Burger King didn't have the security footage anymore, so that was a complete dead end. They didn't know if it was actually Eric who was sitting there sending that email. If it wasn't Eric, the person was pretty smart, going to a public place with public Wi-Fi, so essentially you can't be traced. So after the email was a flop, they couldn't get anything from that, the police decided that the next logical step would be to check into his phone, like forensically, and pings. Unfortunately, I can't find any exact dates except for the last call he made to his mom we know was on March 10th, 2011, but I'll give you the information that they found as best I can, and I may have to look down to read. I'm sorry about that. So after Eric spoke to his mother on March 10th and told her that he would no longer have this phone, he would not have cell service, and stopped all phone contact, his phone was actually used again after that. It was a couple months later. Like I said, I don't have exact dates and times, but the phone was just turned on and turned back off quickly. The number and phone essentially were in and out of service. Like the bill wouldn't be paid, then it would be paid. This is kind of confusing, guys. I'm really sorry. I wrote it very confusingly too. I really hope you're following. So the phone was used. They don't know by who, obviously. They're just looking. What I can confirm as fact is that anytime Eric's phone was turned on or used, because it was used, and I'll talk about that in a minute, it was in or near within a few miles of Bridgeport, Michigan. I don't know exactly where it pinged, but right there, Kendra's caught in a lie, because she said Eric was sitting on her front yard, or in her front yard in his car, texting incessantly and calling her from his phone. And then he said, F this, I'm getting a new girlfriend. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm going to California, and left. So he obviously did not go to California. We know he had that phone on him, the one he said that he didn't have anymore in the emails to his mother, what he said. So, caught in another lie, Kendra, or caught in the same lie, but now by the police. So if Eric left the city or the local area, it wasn't with his phone. 11 days after his mom had last heard from him and he said he was getting rid of that phone and phone number, on March 21st, Eric's phone was used again to make a phone call. Authorities obviously were very interested in these phone calls that were made from Eric's phone on the 21st, so they looked into it. There was quite a strange list of calls that were made that day, to say the least. There were a few calls to local businesses in the area, which didn't lead anywhere. But there was a couple of things that were very interesting. The first was the call that was placed to a junkyard, local salvage yards, and a dentist's office. Eric had posted on social media back in March and February that he was having some trouble with his car, and we know that he also had these dental appointments that he was trying to supposedly from the emails from him, make in Michigan. So him calling a dentist, or his phone calling a dentist's office, his phone calling a salvage yard, wasn't that sketchy yet. But the police had to, of course, call and look into it to see if they remembered who called or had any kind of record. What were these calls made for? When were they made, and by who? So the first place they called was the salvage yard, and they made the inquiry. Who called you? Why had they called you? This was a missing persons case, so they also wanted to know if Eric's car had been junked or dumped at the junkyard. So they gave the description of the car. But unfortunately, regarding the salvage yard and all the salvage yards in the area, their records were so improperly kept and disorganized that they could not give the police really any information. They didn't know who called. They didn't remember the call. It led nowhere again, but somebody had called the salvage yard and a couple of others from Eric's phone on the 21st of March, but nobody remembered who had made the call. And again, the bookkeeping was atrocious, so it led nowhere again. So despite looking like a really promising lead, the salvage yards ended up being a very disappointing dead end. The calls to the dentist, though, were a little less sensible. They made a lot less sense than the salvage yard, because if you remember, on the 10th, Eric was still making the plans, and he had spoke to his mother from March through when he didn't show up in July. So March, April, May, June, and in the beginning of July, about coming to do these appointments to get this dental work done. So why would he be calling a dentist's office on the 21st? Police wanted to find out. The dentist's office was a little more helpful when they said that Eric Lee Franks was not a patient there, and no, to the best of their recollection of the person that was working that day, he had not called. Nobody by that name had called. However, someone close to the case was a patient at this dentist's office. Can you guess who? That's right, Kendra. So Kendra was a patient at this dentist's office that was called from Eric's phone on March 21st, 11 days after he had last vocally spoken to anyone ever, his mom. This was the point when the police finally decided that Kendra was shady as F and suspicious, and they said they needed to go and speak to her and her husband John to see if they had anything to do with Eric's disappearance. Now the police are looking into her. Like, now they finally see that something is going on here. So they go to question Kendra and John. The investigators asked Kendra if it was possible that she had ever used Eric's phone with his permission to call a dental office to try to help him. She denied ever using Eric's phone. She said she never called any salvage yards. She never called any dental offices. The person who answered the phone was a liar. The person who told the police that it might have been her, that she was a patient there, was lying. She was a patient there, but she never called. She never used his phone. Kendra was less than helpful. She really wasn't giving much information. She was giving weird information. She was being very vague. So the police decided to just move on from her and keep the investigation going. I don't know what they were moving on to, though, because obviously she's the most suspicious, in my opinion, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, okay? But it is just my opinion. She's never been charged with anything. But, I mean, come on. Wait till you guys get to the end of this. You're going to be so enraged at how this turns out. So anyway, I don't know what the police were moving on to because they refused to do any forensics. It had been so long since Eric had left the motel, or since anyone had spoken to Eric. Obviously, the room had already been cleaned how many times, right? In 8 months, how many times was the motel room cleaned? I guess they could have tried to go in there, but they never did. It really sucks because thanks to all those damn emails, it took so long for anyone to realize something was going on and that he was missing. And it makes me so, like, angry, like Gemma Smash kind of angry, you know? Eric's mother, however, was really, really pissed, and she decided that she wasn't going to accept the investigators saying, oh, we have no more leads, we have nowhere to go, and stopping the investigation. She was going to do it all alone by herself if necessary to find out and get answers at what happened to her son. Where is her son? She was not giving up, and she did not want to let the police officers give up either just because they had no further leads. Go and find some leads. If the police weren't going to go and speak to people at the motel, which they should have, like the owner of the motel or anyone who may have been staying there, who's still staying there by chance, just to go and see and check, she was going to do it by herself. If you remember, in the first video I mentioned that the owner of the motel and Eric had become kind of close because Eric would do odd jobs to pay for his room and all that stuff. So Eric's mother decided to call the owner of the motel, and she got full cooperation from him, and he was ready to talk to her, and he said he was going to tell her the truth of anything and everything he knew. He really liked Eric, and he had wondered what happened to him too. They were friends. They would talk pretty much every single day. Anytime Eric's mother would randomly think of another question or think of something else she wanted to know, and she would call this motel owner, he would always answer to the best of his ability. He really did try to help her. He wanted answers too. He really liked Eric, as I just said. One question Eric's mother asked in particular led to some very disturbing information, though. One of the questions his mother asked was, when did Eric check out? And the answer she got was absolutely jaw-dropping, stunning. The motel owner said that Eric had never checked out of the motel. The motel owner explained that on the 14th, so 4 days after Eric's mother had last spoken to him, Eric went directly to the owner himself and paid cash for another full week in advance. Now remember, Eric didn't have a lot of money, so he's not going to go and pay all of this money. A week in a motel is a lot of money. It's like $400, $500. But anyway, he wasn't going to just pay for this week and not stay the entire week. He could have paid for a couple of days or another night. He chose to pay for the entire next week for a reason, and whatever reason it was, he knew he was going to be staying there. And he paid this, as I said, in cash to the owner himself. According to the owner, Eric's car was parked there for the next couple of days, the 15th and the 16th. The lights were on and off in his room. His car would come and go, but mainly it was there. So there was activity in Eric's room. So he hadn't actually seen Eric, but he knew that somebody was in the room, which he assumed was Eric. Why would he think it was someone else? Like, the lights would go on during the day, they'd go off at night, and the car, you know, was there, and it would move and come back. So regular, normal activity for someone staying in a motel. So this brings us to 6 days after he last spoke to his mother on the 16th. Up to that point, we know there was activity in Eric's room, just to give you a better timeline. However, the next thing this man had to say was completely bizarre, and that's putting it mildly. He recounted to Eric's mother that from the 17th of March through the early part of the 20th, Eric's lights in his room were on constantly. They never turned off. And his car was also gone at this point. So from the 17th to the 19th, no car, lights burning 24/7. And Eric obviously was not seen either on these days, 17th, 18th, 19th. Remember, he wasn't seen on the 14th or 15th either. It's just presumed because of the activity with the lights in the car. So to put it simply, where the lights would turn on when he would wake up and turn off when he would go to sleep and things like that, that was no longer happening. They were just on. Sorry if I'm being repetitive. I'm just a little off today and trying to get this point across. So for almost four days, lights on. The owner, being friends with Eric, was starting to get concerned with this because Eric had been staying there for long enough that he knew what his normal activity was, and this was not normal for Eric, for the lights to be burning while Eric wasn't even there, and he thought Eric wasn't even there because the car was gone. He took it upon himself at this point to go into Eric's room and check on him because he thought maybe Eric had had some kind of medical emergency if he was there. It was so unusual that he was like, maybe he had an accident, maybe he had slipped and fell, maybe he's in there and needs help. So he had the best of intentions in going in Eric's room, and he didn't think Eric would mind because they were so close, they were friends, and he was genuinely concerned. He said that when he went in the room, Eric wasn't there, but Eric's belongings, the room was completely trashed. Eric's belongings were strewn everywhere. Things were broken here and there. He didn't know if all of his belongings were there, but he had been in Eric's room before when they would hang out and talk, and he had seen Eric's room, like when he would come to the door, how you see in the room, and Eric was very neat. He didn't keep the room like this. The room was completely trashed, no sign of Eric, car gone, lights still burning, and the room a complete mess with Eric's belongings thrown everywhere. So that brings us to the early part of March 20th, right? 11 days after Eric had last spoken to his mother. The afternoon and late part of the 20th, the owner said that he noticed a woman going in and out of Eric's room and loading his belongings into a car. He recognized the woman as Eric's girlfriend. Her name was Kendra. Eric had always talked about Kendra. Kendra had gone to the hotel by herself and with Emily, either to hang out, to pick Eric up. So he knew who Kendra was, and concerned, he figured she would know where he was, and he did approach her. I just want to be clear that seeing Kendra did not make the motel owner suspicious in any way, because he felt like that was Eric's girlfriend. She had every right to be there, and more than likely, she knew where Eric was, and she was just helping him. But he did approach her and ask her what was going on. He was probably wondering why, like I said before, someone like Eric, who had to work so hard for a little bit of money, would waste money on a room and then move out before the time was up. Eric didn't even go and ask him, like, hey, can I get some kind of compensation, some kind of money back? They were friends. That's a logical thought that he might have done that. So again, just curious, hey, what's up with Eric? Why isn't he moving his own stuff? Haven't seen him in a while, kind of thing. Very casual, not suspicious at all at this point. Kendra, of course, was very vague in her response to the questions the motel owner was asking her, but she basically said that she was helping Eric by clearing out his stuff and cleaning the room for him, that he was not coming back, and the next day she handed the key over to the owner herself after moving everything out of Eric's room by herself and cleaning it. I want to make very clear that the motel owner stated later when he spoke to the police, and he also told Eric's mom, that he looked for Eric, like to see if Eric was in the car, was Eric helping out. He did not see Eric. Eric was not with Kendra, and Kendra said, I'm helping him. He's off doing something else, working, and I needed to. I don't know if she said he was working, but he's off doing whatever, and he asked me to help him, so of course I am. So obviously, upon hearing all of this from the motel owner, Eric's mother was suspicious and majorly worried, understandably so. Eric's mother, immediately upon hanging up with the motel owner and getting this information, called the authorities, turned the information he had just given her over to them about everything he had just told her about Kendra, and the authorities were like, okay, we need to go and question Kendra and her husband again, because this is shady AF. A lot of people, including the motel owner, had thought that Kendra had left John to be with Eric. That was the last thing that Eric had talked to his mom about was that Kendra had moved into her own place across town with her two daughters and she had left John. So the police also wanted to question John. When they showed up to question Kendra, she was living in her house with John, with the kids. Turns out, I don't know if she had moved out and moved back, but she was not living in an apartment across town. She hadn't left John. They were still together. They were still living together. They were still together. Kendra and John both spoke to the detectives, but they told a completely different story than what the motel owner had told. Kendra admitted to being at the motel on the 20th and 21st of March. She admitted to cleaning the motel room. She admitted to moving Eric's stuff out. However, she said the motel owner, like the dentist, was a liar and that there were two cars, her car and Eric's car, and they were both loading up. He was with her the entire time, and the motel owner is lying when he says that he did not see him. So let's review all of Kendra's information here before we go any further, because I want to look at it from an outside point of view, and you guys can let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Kendra had stated previously to some of Eric's family and friends that in April, she and Eric were considering being together, and she was considering leaving John and taking her daughters to be with Eric. As far as Eric knew, Kendra had already done this. She had taken her daughters and moved to an apartment across town so that they can be together and be a family. She also stated at one point to Eric's mother and to the authorities that in June of 2011, Eric was parked outside of her house for 3 days and all of that stuff that I told you before, where he said, "F this, I'm going to California." Now, though, upon being questioned by who I believe are the same exact investigators she had previously told all of this to, she told a new story. She told them now that on March 22nd, when she handed the key over, Eric was helping her move. There were two cars there. But now she's saying to the investigators, she and Eric on both days were moving his stuff out and putting it into his car. And when he drove off that day, he was like, "Hey, thank you so much for helping me," gave her a hug. "Can you hand this key back to the motel owner?" Waved goodbye, took off, and she never saw him again. This was allegedly in March. But then she said he had taken off to California in June, but in April she was moving out to be with him. I told you guys, it's crazy and it makes me so angry. Kendra, though, had her own theory about what could have happened to Eric, and she offered it right up to the investigators. According to Kendra, she gave the investigators the name of one of the maids or cleaning ladies at the motel that she said had a crush on Eric. She said this cleaning lady was married, and the man that she was married to was some kind of gangbanger or some kind of really bad person, like mobbed up. I'm not sure exactly what kind of bad person he was, but he was dangerous. He ran with a dangerous crowd, and so did this cleaning lady. She said the cleaning lady would bring baked goods and food to Eric, and she would flirt with him. She would spend time with him in his room, and she thought it possible that Eric was having a romantic sexual relationship with this cleaning lady, and the husband found out and must have done something to Eric. Now, the police have to investigate every lead. So they tracked down this cleaning lady. They tracked down her and her husband. The cleaning lady said she was simply bringing Eric food because she knew that he had nobody. He was new there. There was no affair. Kendra also alleged that the cleaning lady had sent naked pictures to Eric on his cell phone. I don't think the police were ever able to confirm this, but the husband didn't think his wife was cheating. You know, whatever else they were involved in, the police came to the conclusion that it was a wild goose chase by Kendra, and these two people had absolutely nothing to do with Eric's disappearance. So friends, this is where I leave you off in part 2 of the disappearance of Eric Lee Franks. I feel like this video is going to be a lot shorter than I intended it to be, even though the script is 7 pages, just like part 1. So I'm sorry about that. I probably could have made it longer, but this is all I have in the script, and I have not started part 3 yet, the script. I'm going to do that tonight and tomorrow morning. So bear with me. I hope that you are following. I know I was a little bit off today. Please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you liked the video, if you like hanging out with me. Please be sure to subscribe if you're not already, and make sure your notification bell is turned on. Guys, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me. Please be sure to share Eric's story. Just really tired today. I've been sick for a couple of days. I've been having major issues with my Wi-Fi, so I want to apologize to everyone because I did promise this video yesterday, and it should have been out yesterday. Only my Wi-Fi keeps getting turned off. I'm dealing with Altice. If you guys ever dealt with them, then you know. It's just a mess. So I don't want to turn this video about Eric into a video about me, but I have a lot going on. My bangs are driving me nuts. I have to cut them. So I'm sorry if I was a little off. I'm sorry if I was a little repetitive. I hope you still followed the video. I hope you're still interested in Eric's case. I want to see just as many views on this video as on the first one, because I did a part 2 before and part 1 blew up and part 2 had hardly any people watching it. So I hope that you can follow. I hope that I'm giving the information properly, guys. This is really important. This is someone's family member. You know, this is someone's loved one. So please be sure to share as well. If you are interested in contributing financially to supporting me or the channel, please click the link below for my Patreon. It's a $5 minimum. Patreon content coming soon. Thank you, Steve S., Willie S., and Mark T. for being my patrons. Don't worry, I have some amazing exclusive content coming for you very soon. And if you don't want to deal with Patreon, PayPal works just as well, or maybe even a little better. There's a link to my PayPal account. You can donate however much you want, whenever you want. And also, can you please head on over to the podcast Strange Things with Steve Stockton and Gemma Jade. We have such a great time over there. And go over there and hit the subscribe button. The link's in the description box for that as well. I'll see you guys in the comments. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything and can gain you so much. And I'll see you in a few days, hopefully Saturday or Sunday, Lord willing, with part 3 and the conclusion of the disappearance of Eric Lee Franks. Don't forget Patreon, PayPal, Strange Things podcast, links in the description box. And see you soon, guys. Have your best day. Have your best night. And again, I really appreciate you. Mwah.